I just want to let everybody know that pretty much in my whole life, I've been told to never ever let anyone know about my depression or it would destroy my career.
Making changes. That's what 54-year-old musician Richie Derwald has been trying to do through the sound of music. As someone who constantly battles anxiety and depression, he had to overcome the biggest obstacle yet when the pandemic canceled every show he booked through 2020. Derwald says the positive is that he got to spend more time with his family. He says that this is the first time he's publicly announced his struggles. He says he was always told that it would ruin his career. But now he knows and wants to teach others that it's okay to be yourself.
Hi, I'm Susan Banks, and I'd like to introduce you to a gentleman who has been a force on the local entertainment scene for more than 3 decades. And now he's starting a brand new chapter in his life. He also happens to be a friend of mine. Here's Richie Derwald to give us a little background.
I started jotting down these lyrics, and the more I wrote, the more emotions were released, from deep in my heart. And then eventually the lyrics became an original song called Changes. I was able to collaborate virtually with these incredibly talented and highly creative musicians. And we finally recorded the song, and it caught the attention of Anthony Casuccio. Anthony is a 3-time Grammy nominee and the president of the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame. And it really helped when he graciously endorsed Changes on social media, and that gave it a lot of credibility. And after that, Mike Bellani put out a press release that included the fact that I personally suffer from depression, and the story behind Changes was covered by local television news, podcasts, interviews. It had constant airplay on the radio. It was featured in articles and newspapers, and Changes was even chosen as the theme song for a video series featuring the Erie County Commissioner of Mental Health, Mark O'Brien.
I hope that the therapy that I've gotten from creativity will be contagious, and that other people will start diving into their creative projects, because now we got the time.
It's time for a change.
In Tonawanda, Stephanie Dupre, Spectrum News.
In 2020, as you've heard, every show that I had got canceled, and to me personally, it felt like 2020 got canceled. And through that time period until right now, I feel like I'm actually called to try to help other people who have depression and people that don't have depression that just want to help people that they care about. And I want to share some things that I've learned over my lifetime. And I want to start with a little story. I remember way back in the 80s when, and it's funny that I remember anything from the 80s because I lost a lot of brain cells in the 80s and my memory's not so hot. But it's cool because these slides will be just as new to me as they are to you. We'll keep it fresh. So anyway, this computer, to me and my father, was a life changer because we could actually edit video. They had a video program, and I couldn't believe I could edit video at my house, but then it started slowing down. And then it actually froze and didn't work at all. And I called my dad and I said, I have no idea what's going on. And Dad said, well, did you delete all the garbage? And I didn't realize that if I kept putting all these videos on there, that it would take up space and my computer wouldn't work anymore. And I think we all know that the computer is modeled after a brain. And I don't know if you guys can see this. This is an hourglass. And this is kind of like life too. If we don't delete the garbage, we're going to be living in the past. And if we're living in the future, we're going to deal from anxiety, and where we should be living is right here at the neck, because that's the here and the now. So speaking of the here and now, I still couldn't work my video program. And Dad said, well, did you put the antivirus program in? And I said, what? I just put the video CD in. And I guess I didn't realize this, but computers get viruses. And that's what stopped it from working. And just like that, your brain can be infected with a virus. And the virus will come in different forms, but to me, it's negative thoughts. And I get thoughts. I can't stand the fact that I stutter. In fact, I can't believe that I'm being a public speaker right now because I stutter. A little undercover angel kind of talked me into that. And I just can't help but to think that I'm incredibly fat and I'm dyslexic. And that with like, oh no, did I say the wrong thing to that person? Or, I mean, the thoughts are going through my head 10,000 miles. And just like that treadmill, even though I'm not going anywhere, my thoughts are going 10,000 miles a minute. And I'm an empath. So I'm a people pleaser. I worry so much about what other people think. If other people are going through stuff, I'm going through it too. Now, when you have all these negative thoughts, they become habits. And what I mean is, I want to illustrate this. This is a tall field of grass. And the more you walk through it, the more you make a pathway. Now think about your negative thoughts. The more you have, the bigger the path that you make. And all of a sudden it goes from your conscious into your subconscious. And then it's a habit. You wake up in the morning and that's the way you feel. You feel that you're surrounded by all these negative thoughts and you're in a depression. Well, I think a depression is harder than a field of grass. I think depression is more like a snowstorm because it's harder to make a path in. And I mean, it's really hard to get out of a devastating depression. And if you attack the negative thoughts the second they come in, it's kind of like, now we all live in Buffalo, right? So I think we're all going to understand this. If you snow the first time it snows and you keep it up and you keep it up, then it's a lot easier. But let's say you don't. It makes it so hard to shovel. It makes it 20 times harder. And it's like almost impossible to shovel your driveway. But guess what? It is possible. It is a harder route to take, but it is possible. And I've actually done it, and later on I'm going to share how. One thing is I feel that art is essential. In the beginning of this shutdown, all of us artists were told that we were non-essential. Well, that's just simply not true. Now, I don't care if you're into any of these things, music, poetry, paintings, dance, photography, fashion. As long as you use your imagination and you bring something to life, that's art, and it helps so many friends of mine. But so do crafts and cooking and crochet. Anything that comes from your imagination and you bring to life. When you wake up in the morning, you're going to look forward to doing something because you have your art. You have to keep creating things. You have to take what's inside your imagination. You have to let it out. Man, that is therapeutic. Music is a language that everyone can understand.
Right. If you keep your mind and your energy in a positive way, working with people, but helping others, you bring things and you bring people together.
I started a Facebook group, and I thought that I could get my artists who were friends in a group to help each other, to encourage one another, to build each other up. and to really help people who are in a debilitating depression. So I thought I'd call it Original Artist Advocates for Mental Health. Nobody joined because they didn't want to be associated with depression. So then I changed the name, Coping Through Creativity. They didn't like the word coping, so people still weren't joining. And I had all these amazing artists, and I know for a fact that some of them really suffered from depression, but they didn't want to be involved in it. But then I actually took the word depression out of the description and called it Comfort Through Creativity. This attracted a lot of people, and the most of them probably don't have depression, but we are encouraging one another and building each other up, and it's a beautiful thing. But I think the reason why I wanted to tell this particular part of the story, so many people talk about mental stigma, but this is the reverse stigma. This is people like me feeling that they're going to be judged if they tell anyone else. And that was proven by this. When people called me who wanted to help someone they care about who suffers from depression, and that was amazing, the results. And I just try to share with people. This is what I shared with the other people, but with pictures. There's power in your words. The words that you say can seriously affect people. It's kind of like a ship that gets blown by the wind, but the little rudder steers it. It steers the whole ship. Or it's like a horse with a bit in his mouth. Or it's like Godzilla. He shoots the flame. He shoots the flame, and there's a forest fire. He has let's call it the tongue of fire. But I want you to remember this before you choose your words. Also, I want to show you something. This is kind of cool. Watch his hand. Whoa! Okay, that doesn't have anything to do with the presentation. It's just cool. But I digress.
I remember a very dark time period in my life, which I always refer to as my personal hell. I isolated myself from the world, and I locked myself in my bedroom. But who walked in the door? The most optimistic guy on the planet, my dad, Mr. Fitness. And he said, "Richie, everything's fine. It's fine. All you gotta do is snap out of it." Believe it or not, that didn't help. It just hurt. Because on top of everything else, now I was guilty because I was letting my dad down. Okay. Moving on to Exhibit B. Here's a classic gem of a revelation from a self-proclaimed prophet who was really a professional wrestler by the name of Captain Testosterone.
And he always gave you the same horrible advice.
You know what the captain says? You gotta put on your big boy pants and step up to the plate. Man up, Brohim.
Mr. Testosterone, here's a newsflash. If you really think that you can help someone who's suffering with mental illness by telling them to have a quick attitude adjustment, then you can just snap out of it.
I actually made a whole presentation called Snap Out of It. But then I had a beautiful opportunity to collaborate with two critically acclaimed public speakers. And this is why they talked me out of it. This is one of the most talented guys on the planet, Nels Ross. And Nels thought my whole approach was a little mean-spirited. And he said, you know, these people do have good intentions. So you really have to state that. And you know what? Of course they did. Of course they did. But when you're in a really bad depression, some things just don't help you. They hurt you. Dr. Kate, who is just such a wonderful person, and she helped me so much with this presentation, she said, why don't you snap out of it and flip it like a trigger? Now, if you don't know what a trigger is something that's a visual that you visualize the second that you have a negative thought. Now, here is the typical one. It's a stop sign. So when you have the idea is when you have a negative thought, you visualize a stop sign. This never helped me at all. Never helped me at all. I had to come up with something that fit my personality, and you do too. Me personally, the visualization that helped me to stop the negative thought was Snagglepuss. Exit stage left even. Snagglepuss worked because then I started thinking about, nobody pulls the wool over a Bugs Bunny's eyes. My friend Rosemary's kind of like Bugs Bunny, and my whole thought pattern changed. Now, what Dr. Katie was talking about is using snap out of it as my visualization every time I had a negative thought. And I used it so many times because before this presentation, I'm like, I can't get into a major depression or I'm going to be a hypocrite when I give this presentation. And it was tough because I deal with it every day and I've used snap out of it. Now here, if you look up, this is important. This is my kitty Gritty, and Gritty really helped me during the worst depression in my entire life because Gritty showed me unconditional love. No matter where I went, Gritty followed. If I was on a chair, Gritty was there. If I was in bed, Gritty slept with me. No matter where I went, if I'm sitting on the toilet, he went in the bathroom and he walked around my legs in a figure eight and purred. And he was the most important thing in my life at the time. I just loved that cat because he really helped me. And we can learn a lot from animals. Now, I'm not saying that I want you to go in the bathroom and do a figure eight around someone's leg and start purring, but I'm saying that Gritty didn't say a word and he helped me. He couldn't say a word because he's a cat, but that's not the point. The point is that unconditional love is so important. Now, Nels Ross, the king of acronyms, there you go. Just want to pull this. Nels is really the king of acronyms because when he heard me talking about Gritty, he came up with this: patience, engagement, trust, and support. These are like the 4 keys. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I do play one on TV. In fact, I think the director's here with us today. But I do have a prescription before we start talking about pets. And the prescription is unconditional love. Unconditional love is so important because if you don't have the love, then you can't do any of this. So here are the 4 keys to helping someone with depression. Patience. This dog is insane. He had such personality. Me and my sister Kathy didn't even know what to name him, but we thought, let's name him something that would be really funny when my mom has to call him inside and she's calling out the door. So we named this insane dog, and was amazing because that's how my mom had to call the dog. Now, eventually he became Bagak. And we had him for, forever, but in the very beginning, we realized why a lot of people didn't keep him is because he was insane. And he would just like poo everywhere. There's like poo all over the whole house. And we really had to have a lot of patience. Very long story short, we started putting newspapers down, and over time, the guy just went outside. And we're so happy because he was so amazing. Now, there's this film called What About Bob with Bill Murray, and I love the film. And there's a book called Baby Steps. And even though this film's a comedy, there is some merit to the idea behind baby steps. It's one step at a time. So let's be like Gritty. You don't need words. If you sit with somebody on the couch, watch TV, ask them if they want a cup of tea, actions speak louder than words, and the simplicity of just saying, would you like a cup of tea? Those are baby steps that work. engagement. This is my kitty Blue. I didn't warm up to Blue right away because I thought I was cheating on Gritty. So he warmed up to the rest of my family. Then I broke, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I went and I tried to find his pleasure spots. You know, kitties have pleasure spots. How many people have cats out there? If there's any hand raising. Okay. All right. Maybe we have more dog people here today. But I tried to find his pleasure spots. So I scratched him on the head, and that didn't work. I tried to scratch him underneath his chin. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm going to go for the thing where I pet him from his head all the way down to his tail. He jumped off my lap. Blue wasn't having it. Blue needed to be the person who came to me. He needed some sense of control, and that started happening. But just 2 weeks ago, I saw Blue in the kitchen, and I thought he was dead because he was as stiff as a board. Then he started having a seizure, a really, really bad one. And I picked him up and I held him. I knew he was terrified. I was terrified too. I thought he was going to die. And after the seizure stopped, I kept holding him and holding him and holding him. This happened quite a few times. And now Blue is coming up to me. And the purring is amazing. I mean, and when I pet him from head to tail, his little butt comes up right, and I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. But it had to be on Blue's terms. Blue had to come to me. So people who suffer from depression, they don't have any sense of control. It stinks. But if you're talking to them or interacting with them, why don't you try this? Give them a little sense of control. Ask them questions. Can I stop over Thursday? Do you want me to get you a pizza? Can I send you a text every day just to keep in touch? Trust. This is Reese. And oh my goodness, was she a cute puppy. And when we first got her, we went to pet her, and she cowered back in fear. She was terrified. And we were thinking, wow, did her former owner like beat her, or you know what happened? Very long story short, the trust was built over time, and now Reese will lay on her back and let you scratch her tummy and everything, and it's just beautiful. We love Reese. And the only lesson here is trust is built through the test of time, and you need unconditional love to do it. Unconditional love is your prescription. This is not an animal. This is my sister Kathy, and Kathy was a director and a filmmaker. And this is one of the roles that she talked me into doing. And Kathy herself, yes, that's Kathy, was, I mean, she's quite the character, and she played in all different roles. And we're talking about the support here. I remember when we were in a bar, and I was even heavier than I am now. I was like 30 pounds heavier. I had a really long hair, and the guy at the bar said, "You look like Meatloaf." And Kathy said, "Oh, no, he doesn't. He doesn't look like Meatloaf. He looks like Pot Roast because he's a lot more muscular." So we just thought that was hysterical, and we made a movie called Pot Roast. It was a parody out of Meatloaf's Bad Out of Hell album. We call it Bad as Hell, and did songs like, "You took the fudge right out of my mouth. Oh, it must have been while you were kissing me." Okay, and I had such a great time with Kathy. And I remember once, because, you know, she moved to Florida. And when she came back into town, I had gained even more weight. And I was so embarrassed. I was really embarrassed. And Kathy's like, "This is great. You're funnier when you're fat." And like, it felt like being fat was a good thing. And we actually did a movie called A Rat Man. I couldn't have did that if I was thin. And other times she supported me as an actor. There was a role that I was afraid to do because I just didn't understand it. And she says, "Richie, you can do any role that you want. I just wear the makeup and put on the outfit and do the role." She supported me more than anyone as far as my talents as an actor went. And I just want to show you this very short little home movie. Little Kathy supported me since I was a kid, since people were bullying me for being fat and stuttering. But when Kathy supported me, it kind of felt like a little piece of heaven. She was that sweet. I mean, sweetest little girl you'd ever want to meet. She even used to save the ants so they wouldn't get hurt outside. You know, Kathy is just the most incredible sister that you could have. She was an amazing character, highly creative, and I cannot put into words the support. There was a phone call that I'll never forget, 2 words that changed my life. I answered the phone and I heard, "Kathy's dead." I fell to the floor, face down. It was the most awful moment of my entire life. But who was with me? It was amazing. It was my friend Jen. And not only did she understand loss, tragic loss, but she also suffered from depression all of her life. And here's the point. The point is that Jen helped me to become the strong one in the family, because Jen knew just what to say, and Jen knew what not to say. And it really proved that, to me, that you can't help anyone who suffers from depression if you don't understand it yourself. Can I say that one more time? You can't help anyone who suffers from depression if you don't understand it yourself. Now, I'm going to take more questions at the end, but if anyone has any questions, I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. I think you probably have to raise your hand.
I just wondered, the role of encouragement. What were some of the figures that were encouragement to you? Because it sounds like that was a huge thing for you, and that's just something big I see in your life and your role and what you do. So who were some of the people that were encouragers to you besides Kathy? You mentioned.
Oh, my mom is the poster child for unconditional love. I mean, she was the mom that all the kids in the neighborhood went to. She supports everyone. She is filled with unconditional love. And my dad, obviously, without my dad, I wouldn't have a career in music. He, being with his vaudeville background and all the actors and singers, and he just really supported me and really forced me to come outside of my comfort zone in some of the worst depressions in my life. I think just people who I consider my real friends and people who I consider my real friends really don't want anything from me. We just both want to encourage each other and build each other up. And through this shutdown, I reconnected with so many of my real friends, including you, Nels. So if there's no more questions, let's move on. So this is where I'm going to try to help everybody to actually understand depression. And I'm in this company. Actually, I just wanted to take a detour just for a second. This is important. I'm in a company called Dramatic Solutions, and it's a business theater. And what they do is they entertain you and they educate you as well. I mean, they do things very important presentations on sexual harassment and diversity in the workplace. And A-list actors are performing, but there is a point. So right now, the point is I want you to try to understand depression. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to jump into the dark pit of depression, depression, depression. Okay, this is me when I was a little kid, and not just when I was a little kid, but all my life. It actually feels natural to be bullied, used, and mentally abused. Again, it feels like these things should happen, being bullied, used, or mentally abused, because I have self-hatred, which is really the core issue of my depression. Self-hatred is an awful, awful, terrible thing. Now, on the other hand, I was really blessed to grow up in an authentic vaudeville family. And I met so many amazing people, jugglers, ventriloquists, singers, lots of pro wrestlers. But this one guy, Mr. Dick O'Connell, the man of 1,000 voices. He would teach me things like, Richie, Bela Lugosi played Dracula, and he sounded like this. The children of the night, what music they make. Mr. Peter Lorre, this is driving me insane. And Richie, this is Rodney Dangerfield. I'll tell you, I'm all right now, but last week I was in rough shape. I went to the psychiatrist. He told me I was crazy. I said I wanted a second opinion. He says, all right, you're ugly too. Dick taught me so many things that changed my life. But he said one thing that I'll never forget. He said, Richie, the world is a stage. And when you walk out onto that stage, you got to smile like a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. So I did. I smiled all the time. And if I didn't, I wouldn't have a show business career, because everybody would know that I suffer from depression. And boy, I will tell you what, just like Captain Testosterone, I was wearing a mask. I was wearing a mask all the time. And that's not good when you're alone in your room, suffering from depression, not being able to be yourself. That is why this is so important that I share this with you. All right. I spent the most of my life what I call climbing the ladder. And because of the vaudeville background, I enjoyed every step because of the diversity of the whole thing. And really quickly, and this is all going to come into play, I have country music. That's the way I started out, country music. And then I did rock. And then I did lounge, and finally show band. You know, I kind of wish that I had a ladder to demonstrate. Oh, there's one. Country music. My father went to a place called the Club Utica, and he told the owner, Richie loves George Jones and Conway Twitty. I didn't know who they were. But next week, I was going to sing their music. And I didn't even understand country music. In fact, I didn't know what to do. I was beating myself up. So, you know, what I did is I drank enough hard alcohol until I understood country music. And I ended up loving it and loving the people inside of the Club Utica. And then the Club Utica closed, and I was in the dark pit of depression until my dad came in and said that he booked me at a rock club. But he told the owners that I could do Bob Seger and John Cougar Mellencamp. I didn't know how to sing rock. I was a country singer. So I just didn't know what to do. So I, once again, started self-medicating. And there was a lot of pot involved. And just to be totally honest with you, LSD as well, until I figured out that if I wanted to sing rock, I had to mix singing and screaming. was working so hard that I pretty much lost my voice, and I went into a terrible, awful depression. And again, I'm blessed because I met a Las Vegas legend, and Gene Ferrari, he's just been helping me for my whole career. He introduced me to his vocal teacher, Lois Gilbert, and she actually tutored people like Engelbert Humperdinck, people at the Metropolitan Opera. And with those lessons, I got my voice back. And then we went to Vegas, and we saw this show called Legends, The Legends of Las Vegas. And there's like 11 people up there, like impersonating Elvis and Tom Jones and Neil Diamond. And like, it was an amazing show. And what does my father tell people? We can do a budget Legends. And the reason why it's a budget is because instead of having 11 people on stage, Richie will do all those characters in full costume. Wow. Wow. Believe it or not, after that, I was in a horrible depression. I didn't know how I was going to pull this up. Long story short, I met my wife, Debbie, and she started doing Cher and Tina Turner and Dolly Parton and so on. And what we had now was a show band, the most animated, awesome band I've ever performed with. We performed at resort areas and the greatest things, the Thousand Islands, Caesar's Palace. And the biggest show that I ever had was the worst show I ever had because the band was falling apart. And climbing up this ladder all these years and then being on the road and having the worst shows of our entire life. The band, I can't even get into it. But on stage, they look like the Night of the Living Dead. It was horrible. My career was over. It was, at least I thought it was. But at the time, if I just had a way to illustrate that, here it goes. All right. 18 years of my life was down the toilet. It was all over. Now this is where we're going to understand the pit of depression, because that's just where I went. After that ladder broke and my whole world shattered on me, it was all over. It was all over. I want to just get you inside my head. What do these three things have in common? Doing the dishes, answering the phone, or taking out the garbage. Think about it. Dishes, phone, and garbage. Did you know what they are? They're all things that are overwhelming when you suffer from depression. It's hard to understand, but try to understand this. You're in a dark, 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 dark place. You don't like the light. You feel like a vampire. When the light hits you, it hurts. You're in jail. You're in the jail of your depression. Now, there's an open door, all right. There's an open door, but you can't walk through that door because you're paralyzed by your depression. See, folks, it's not just about like being blue or sad or that kind of thing. This is like a major, when you're in a debilitating depression, it's horrible. And then I was on so many meds. Oh, I got to clarify something. I'm not telling anyone that meds are bad or you should get off them or anything like that. No, I'm still doing a small amount now, and they're part of the big plan. There is no a magic pill, but I'm not saying that you shouldn't take meds. But I was taking like 8 different kinds. I was taking opiates, and I was totally frozen. I didn't have emotions anymore. I was frozen. So there was a strange series of events. My wife's sister's friend's teacher got an email from a theater group that he didn't know, who was looking for a male actor to play John the Baptist. Now, for some reason, this was intriguing. I'm frozen. I'm like, well, John the Baptist screams a lot. I think I'm going to do it. And I can't believe it. I got out of my jail cell and I went to rehearsal. And the first day I sat next to a beautiful woman, let's just call her Crystal. And I sat next to Crystal and she was almost in tears. I said, Crystal, what's wrong? And we had this amazing conversation. And I noticed something. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't feeling horrible. I went to rehearsals even when I didn't have to because I wanted to talk with Crystal. And that play really helped me. In fact, honestly, that play helped me to start digging out of that depression. It was the beginning. But guess what happened? The play was over, and it was an elevator back downstairs, and I was right back where I started from. And then a few months later, I was contacted because now the theater company was looking for someone to play Jesus. Okay, now think about this. I am way too fat to play Jesus. It would be like, it's Meatloaf as Jesus. That Last Supper was a killer. When Jesus went into the desert and was fasting, they didn't mean fast food. I made all these excuses. I just said, I'm not playing the role of Jesus. Sorry, we're closed. Until two people from the theater company, Charlie and Linda, came to my house. And Linda, the angel she is, was crying at my door. And I said, I'm sorry, I just can't do this role. And I'm too fat. I can't do it. And she says, Richie, the whole company knows how much you love people. You need to play this role. It doesn't matter what you look like. It matters who you are. I started crying because of the first time in my life in any show business capacity, I was told it doesn't matter what I look like. You don't know the crazy diets I went on to get in other productions, but let me tell you what helped me dig out. The company showed me patience. I stutter, and Jesus talks a lot, and they had to deal with that during all the practices. The way they engaged with me, they showed me respect. They showed me unconditional love, the trust. Over time, there's the guy I told you about, Charlie. Over time, we couldn't see each other for 10 years, call each other, and whatever the other one needed, we would be right there for him. And support. Having all these things, that made my pathway right out of depression. It was it was like a whole different life. I gave up traveling on the road. Now I have 4 kids and a beautiful family. Remember I told you about my mom earlier? She's the poster child for unconditional love. There's my kids. Summer, Jada, Hunter, and Sawyer. There's my wife, Debbie. Unconditional love is really the key. It's the key. I want to share just something that I've learned over my whole life. I'm 54. I'm 54 years old, and I've learned one really, really, really important thing. If you're suffering from a depression, if you are, please listen to this part. Just like a radio station, there's thoughts that are going through the airwaves like frequencies, and it really matters what you tune into. But let me tell you something, folks. You have the power to change the channel. You can combat negative thoughts with a surprise attack at the onset. What I'm telling you here, please pay attention to this, because it's so important. You need to attack those negative thoughts on the onset. The second they come, the millisecond that they come, you just stand up to them and say, snap out of it. Use whatever you want to use. In fact, I don't know, do you guys remember Little Richard from, I saw him on Hollywood Squares? He used to say this catchphrase that sometimes I use to combat those negative thoughts. Little Richard used to say, woo, shut up. And sometimes I'll picture Little Richard. Through my whole life, I want to bring this up again. It feels natural for me to be bullied, used, mentally abused, because all my life I've had self-hatred. It's always there. Hating myself. I feel better because I have the opportunity to use my life to really help other people. And because of that, I don't hate myself anymore. And if you feel the same way, I invite you to join me. Thank you very much. Wonderful. So I think you can kind of tell I've shared some things that I've never talked about in my whole life. And folks, being vulnerable is freeing. It's freeing. Share what you're feeling inside with other people. The stigma now belongs to us. You know, like in 2020 after the pandemic and shutdown, there are depression's an epidemic. So many people have depression. I was depression before it was cool, all right? But what I'm trying to say is, if you don't share something, it's basically a reverse stigma. You're the one, because people nowadays, they are really open to talking about it. And okay, I digress. Are there any questions? Could you help me with the questions, Ida, if anybody's doing the share?
I just want to share with you, it's not questions, but people are just saying things like, wow, you're not alone. Someone said, so much of this hits home with me. Someone said, please forward me the recording location. They want to share it with some other folks. Some people said, congratulations, Richie. And they said, all the best. This was somebody named Gail. She said, Gail. And someone said, Richie, this is wonderful, very insightful, and gave me a lot to think about. Okay. Wonderful sharing. I sure, another person, I sure hope there's a recording on this. I'd love to see it.
You know how this happened, Ida. You know
no,
how
I
all
don't.
this happened.
No, I don't.
All right. Well, I'm going to say this. There was an undercover detective that scouted me out. And they saw some of the media. I was like a New Year's Day. And pretty much on that phone call, they talked me into being a public speaker. Can you imagine someone who stutters, who's dyslexic, being a public speaker? You don't really see that very often. But what was so overwhelming was that I knew deep in my heart that I could use my life to help other people. And when the undercover detective told me, and it was an undercover detective because the detective saw it on the news, didn't have any contact information, and asked all the people at the news channel, had a scout down to I don't know if a person that worked at the desk or something, and they finally got my information. And by the end of the phone call, all of a sudden, I was the advocate for mental health by doing presentations. And I just want to let everybody know how much I appreciate your comments. This is the first time that I've ever done this. This is the very first time that I've ever done this. And I'm so glad that I did it with you guys.
I don't know how to raise my hand still, but can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Do we have time? I don't know what the time frame is.
How much time we got?
First, can you do Snagglepuss again? What did he say?
Okay, I'll do it. Okay. Heavens to hazardous, heavens to Murgatroyd, exit, stage left even. But the only part I use is the trigger is exit, stage left even. And a little Richard, woo, shut up. And of course, snap out of it, so those are my triggers.
And the snap out of it is what intrigues me. I was honored that we fell out of touch and got back in touch, and you said some kind words about that crazy juggler. But I got to tell you, man, this is inspiring. This is there's something about, I'm taking notes here, and I've already heard some of this before, and just it seems like you're finding your joy in serving and helping and uplifting, and encouraging others. That encouragement is huge, man. I can't tell you how much.
See?
And
I just that success, it didn't resolve. That's just like, the success didn't resolve the depression.
No.
In fact, success, quote, wasn't. And really what it was finding that heart. I see in what you do, how you just encourage others. And that, I think that something about the joy of service, I think is going to encourage a lot of people here. Finding the way that they can encourage and uplift and serve, help some neighbor, some friend.
You know what's funny with Nels Ross and Dr. Kate? We were working on a big project about team building, and then we became a team, and how, these people are critically acclaimed public speakers, and they're hanging out with me, and we're working on something, and they taught me so much, and the biggest thing they taught me is there's only one P in depression. Just want to let you know. Ida, is there any comments or any questions?
No, like I said, it's all just encouraging things. That's what it is. And I just, I appreciate you, and it was a pleasure meeting you. And I'll confess, okay, yes, I was the detective. Okay, that was me. I was the detective.
Do your cover.
I knew that, Ida. I knew that, Ida, when he said the detective. I said, okay.
This is Shirley Burnett. We have 3 PCs at SUNY Erie, and she's our North Campus PC. I'm City Campus PC.
Oh my!
And I enjoyed the presentation. I'm sorry that you had to go through this, but at least you know what to do now. So I know too. When it hits me, I can say, "Snap out of it."
And I'm gonna say, "Shut up,
shut up."
But if you're gonna be a little Richard, you have to go, "Woo! Shut up."
Well, look, Miss Burnett, tell him I'm an actress in another life.
Yeah, shut up. She's already acting.
So I have another
but
question.
I have to go. But I'm sure Ida will be in touch with you, because I would like for you to come to North Campus. So we'll be in touch.
You say, yeah, she did.
And you at North Campus right now, so you don't have to do nothing but come across the quad. So I have another meeting to go to. So, but I really enjoyed.
Thank you. That's so cool. I just thank you. Just the most wonderful things have been happening, especially in 2021. The most amazing things are happening, and it's because of people like you and the detective that are making this happen, and it's because of the people's comments. Because even if there's like one person out there that gets something out of this, it was totally worth doing all that work to put it together.
We have a question up there.
Just to clarify.
Well, thank you. And I'll make sure I get a copy of it, because I would like a copy. I need to share it with somebody, and you know who. So you can do your other job. I did figuring it out. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, thank
Bye,
you.
Shirley. So I have a question to clarify, because I'm still processing some of this. So the snap out of it, when somebody else directed that at you, it didn't help. But when you realized that you did have some control, that there was something that you could take baby steps, like you said, then you were able to flip it, and you were able to use it. So it's like, I guess I've been reading about reframing or reprogramming our responses. So you're not saying that your one phrase is going to solve it all.
No.
But we can learn to reframe or reprogram or flip our responses.
Well, going back to what I started with, the brain is like a computer, and we program it. So our conscious, when we take things in with our conscious mind, if there's a negative thoughts and we keep allowing those thoughts, and folks, it is hard to stop those negative thoughts. And if anyone out there thinks that I'm saying it's easy to put on a trigger, You got to train yourself. It's like a habit. What's it take? 3 or 4 weeks to get into a habit? You got to keep trying over and over and over again. But, and these techniques, everybody's different. We all have different personalities. I know that when people say, hey, well, what medications are you on? I say, I'm not going to tell you because everyone has different body chemistries. Well, everyone has different personalities. And Snagglepuss isn't going to work for everyone. You got to find your own trigger. But I will say this for sure. When you're frozen in that snow and you're on the pathway to depression, it's so hard to get out of it. But if you stop those negative thoughts the second they come in with things, snap out of it. Do what you want to do. Train yourself to do it. It's not easy. Depression is a boxing match every single day. I mean, for me, again, everybody is different, but by no means am I implying that this is easy, because it isn't. Thank you, everybody. I think you're still there, right, Ida?
Yep, I'm still here. So I you talk longer, but if anybody has any more questions, please have them share them now. If not, we're just gonna celebrate you again with our emojis, because we do appreciate you, and we're just so glad that you said yes. Because you could have said to me, "Why is this person stalking me?" But you didn't.
No, Ida, like I keep saying to you, this was supposed to happen. I think we all know that. And I want to just thank you, and I want to thank everybody for having me here today. And again, you know what? You just gave me a big round of applause, but for the people out there who are suffering from depression, I want to give you a round of applause, because you know what? I know the last thing that you want to do when you're in a bad depression is go to like a motivational presentation, okay? That's the last thing that you want to do. So it kind of tells me that if you came, then you're already on your road to shoveling out of that snow and making your pathway out of depression and back to a life that you can actually enjoy.
Yeah, yeah.